Voltron will be back after these messages. And now, back to Voltron, Defender of the Universe.
Welcome, Voltron fans. This is Mark Morell, your host for Let's Voltron, the official Voltron podcast. We're here for another exciting interview. And I have to bring on my co-host, Greg Tyler. So welcome, Greg.
Hey, Mark Morell. Welcome, listeners, Voltron fans across the universe. It's great to be back. It's great to talk with our special guest. I've been following his YouTube channel since its inception earlier this year. I've known of this guy since the dawn of Matty Collector in the early 20-teens. And I'm also a collector of many of the products that he helped to spearhead. So why don't we bring our guest on?
So I'm excited because I haven't talked to him since 2012 at New York Comic Con with Jeremy Corey. That was back when I was doing it for Toon Barn. And ever since the podcast has come out, I've been excited about having him back on. So we want to give a warm welcome for Let's Voltron. He's also known as Toy Guru, but he's a former marketing manager at Mattel during the period when he created MattyCollector.com. And he's now creative director for Spector Creative. Give a warm welcome to Scott Neitlich.
Hi, Scott.
Hi. Hey, Mark. Hey, Greg. How are you?
It is wonderful to have you on. We're doing well. How are you?
It's a thrill to be on. Thank you so much for inviting me. I absolutely appreciate it. It's great to talk.
We appreciate talking with you. And Mark, why don't you refresh our memories about your previous encounter with Scott?
All right. So it was exciting at the time because this was when Matty Collector was coming out with the 23-inch Voltron. In the big Lions, were coming out individually as part of, being part of the club. You had to join the club first, and then you were going to give the opportunity to, buy each of these Lions as they came out. And the interview that we did was just 3 days before. Actually, it was the day before. October 15th, 2012 was when the Black Lion was released at noon Eastern time. And it sold out in 20 minutes. And this was the day before at New York Comic Con when we were talking about it. And we were at the Mattel booth, and he had opened up the case and had brought out the big, huge, hunking Voltron. And we started talking about it. And then Jeremy Corey joined us in the interview. And it was like a almost 11.5-minute interview. We actually talked about the figures that go inside the giant Voltron. And it was just an awesome interview. It was great to see Scott. And now here we are 8 years later, and we actually get to talk to him on the podcast. So this is cool.
Well, yeah, thanks again for joining us, Scott.
Truly, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for honestly having me in the invitation.
Yeah, so why don't we talk about you and Spector Creative and what you're up to now and your YouTube channel and all that great stuff.
YouTube? What's YouTube? So let's see. I was with Mattel for many years, and then a few smaller toy companies, Jax, Jada, Entertainment Earth for a little while. And basically looking for a better quality of life for our family. We were living in the middle of Los Angeles, busy city, et cetera, et cetera. We found this beautiful town, Greensboro, North Carolina. It's got 300,000 people, 5 comic book stores, a water park, and a dinosaur museum.
Nice.
So, wow. I like those odds. So we moved, after vacationing here, we packed up the whole family and just like no friends, no family, no jobs, just let's move someplace better and set up shop. And I started kind of doing some freelance work for a couple companies who needed, help with projects that sort of hit my skill set, branding, marketing, content creation. And while my original intent was, I'll just settle down, I'll get like a job, in a marketing agency or something like that. It really took off, and I just kept getting calls from people saying, hey, we could sort of use a toy guru. So I formed Spector Creative, which you can see on SpectorCreative.com.
It's Spector.
Yep, O-R, Spector, like the He-Man figure. And you get a lot of the services I offer. I mean, it's basically kind of what branding, marketing, content, but I also do very unique toy services that really no one else in the industry does, which are namely emotional product development, meaning coming from after being in the toy industry for so many years, most toys are produced because a spreadsheet tells them they should be made. And I always approach, especially toy product. I have clients that are in other industries, beauty industry, things like that. But no matter what the product is, I always come to it from an emotional standpoint of why is someone buying this? What is the emotional connection? Why do children play? Why do collectors collect? And my partner is a child play therapist. Was a master's from NYU in child play therapy. So, we work really great from that aspect. And then the other unique service is what I call toyetic script review.
Merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made. Spaceballs the t-shirt, Spaceballs the coloring book, Spaceballs the lunchbox, Spaceballs the breakfast cereal, Spaceballs the flamethrower. The kids love this one.
So I work with studios and writers who develop scripts that are intended to be, have toy lines, or consumer products. And I help them to ensure there are toyetic qualities from day one. Most of the time when a studio is making a movie, even call it like a Batman movie or a Spider-Man movie, they will sort of try to get it to work as a toy after the movie shot.
Gotcha.
So I work with them ahead of time to infuse the script with what I call toyetic elements to make sure that it can produce better product. And not just better product, but product people will actually want and will engage them in the movie and in the product and, a whole circle of life kind of thing.
Something that actually matches the movie, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not forced into the movie, but it actually feels natural. And if you're the head of a studio out there watching this, or you own a toy company, check out Spector Creative because I'd love to work with you.
Yeah,
awesome.
that's. I love the way you talk about getting back to the basics, why children play, the emotional connection that they have with toys, and people with retail products in general, consumer products. There was a time, we all remember, we're all old enough to remember a time before spreadsheets. And, these products are not sold to Microsoft Excel, they're sold to human beings. And it makes sense that you'd want to figure out what drives a human being, a person, a child, an adult, whatever your target market is, what is it that gets them emotionally involved in your product? That's fascinating.
So would you say, Scott, how children play today is different than how children play when we were kids?
On the core, no. It's more that they have different options, like screens, which are eroding into playtime. But the way children engage with play and use play to help them understand the world, because you have to remember, we all obviously know, kids are small. And to them, the world is a very, I'm not going to call it scary place, but intimidating is maybe the right word. Anything from a dump truck to a skyscraper, even to an adult human, whether they're your parent or, teacher, or aunt and uncle, they're big. They're very intimidating. And toys are a way for children to relate to their world and to try to understand their world. That's why kids play with dolls and action figures, because they're what I call avatars for the imagination. And they're ways for a child to project themselves into this play object is really a way to help understand the world around them, which is why play is so important. And when children are just using screens, they're losing, because screens are honestly, they're like gambling, or in a way. They're just, hitting buttons and getting reactions, with lights and sounds, and it's not true play. It's a distraction. It's not, really a healthy dopamine release, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Versus play release, they both play and screens release dopamine, but in different ways. And the dopamine that's released when you're using screens, even for adults, is really the type of dopamine that you get when you gamble or smoke or drink drugs or something, like, if you will. From a scientific standpoint, that's like what's getting released in the brain. When you play or you laugh or you're on a roller coaster, the dopamine release is healthy, if you will. It's more of a healthy release. It's not an addiction release. Gotcha. And that's what play should be about. So,
That's fascinating. I will tell you that as much as I try to fight my own screen addiction, I often find myself, just for no reason, and I'm not a kid anymore, at least not biologically, looking at this stupid thing and refreshing the screen with ridiculous frequency at something as in many cases non-productive as Facebook usually is. You know what I mean? And so I could totally understand how that might on some level affect a child. I mean, I'm certainly not a psychologist, but I can see how it affects me sometimes. And yeah, that totally makes sense about the dopamine and the play or enjoyment you get out of a screen versus an actual physical toy.
Yeah, like, ooh, I got another like. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, it's an issue for adults too. I mean, like you just, I mean, when I found myself the same thing, like sort of recognizing I was doing that, it's one of the reasons that I started picking up non-screen hobbies. I read a lot more. I taught myself a musical instrument. I working on, if you follow my YouTube videos, hieroglyphics, and things like that. I did literally deliberately to get myself off of a screen, so that I was doing something.
Would you say it's a different chemical that gets released in the body when a child is using their imagination as compared to, getting a rewarded thing that causes the dopamine rush?
Well, it's the same chemical. It's still dopamine.
Okay.
But it's a different type. It's like, think of it as the dopamine rush that a gambler gets when they win a jackpot versus the dopamine you get when you open a new Voltron toy.
Oh yeah, we know that feeling. Yeah, and so in addition to Voltron and many other things, I happen to be a huge aficionado of Mr. Rogers, and he very often talked about play being the work of a child to understand themselves, their feelings, the world around them, and it was an important part of growth. And I have to imagine that the as you said, sort of the role play, the processing of the world around you through play is something that is very, very important to child development. And
especially right now in the country, we're in with this whole COVID lockdown thing, with so many kids not in school. I mean, I hate to put it like this, but it's borderline child abuse. What we're doing to their brains. I mean, kids you can't recover this time. Children, especially, your 4 to 10-year-olds, the way that your brain is developing, you can't replace this. And kids need to be in school, learning, socializing. So play is, you said it right, it's the way they relate to the world, and it's the way they understand their feelings, their emotions, their friends, their parents. So toys are good. Yay, toys.
Yeah, we definitely played a lot more during recess than any other time. I mean, there was even a whole cartoon about recess.
Which was this?
The one that came out on Nickelodeon. It was called Recess.
Oh, okay. I missed that one. I'm sorry.
That was after we were kids.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Understood. Yeah.
But so now you're in a position where you can work with that with movie studios, but you work with other things other than movie studios right now as well, right?
Yeah, like I said, I've got right now is a company called Avocados Hair. That's avocado with an E, like a dose of avocado hair. It's a company that created a new super serum for that came from Europe. It's huge in Europe, and they brought it to the U.S. And a lot of the companies I work with, I just help. I'm helping them not just develop their product, but I run their e-commerce, I run their websites.
Wow!
But I help them again to, like this company is not just selling shampoo; they are selling the feeling of, wow, I have amazing hair. How great do I feel about myself? And it's amazing because I gave it to my wife and daughter, and they were just like blown away by how good this stuff was.
Oh,
so avocadoshair.com. You can check it out.
All right.
Free plug.
All right.
Of course, we love talking about toys, right? Right, Greg?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So one of the things I love about your YouTube channel is when you introduce yourself as not just someone who's been in the industry for X years, but you also have a child and you're a life or an adult collector of toys. And you mentioned how that gives you a unique perspective on the industry. And I'm curious, what as an adult collector, what are some of your favorite passions?
From a toys perspective,
yeah.
toy lines that I collect.
Sure.
Because I do have some non-toy passions as well.
I imagine so. Yeah.
And yes, and by the way, people can check the YouTube channel is just called Spector Creative. So you can find it on YouTube just by searching Spector Creative.
Nice.
So I've always been a huge Star Wars 3 3/4 fan.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay.
I kind of cut myself off at the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Although Mandalorian is definitely giving me a run for my money there. This is the way. But I basically have, all of us toy fans are all, OCD to some point, and I have every single original trilogy, meaning episode 4, 5, and 6, 3 3/4 figure from Power of the Force 2, Orange Carded Chewbacca through the Lars Family Gonk droid released like a month ago.
Wow. Nice.
Wow. They're all in little individual bins, and with the accessory and stuff. And then I've got a loose bin of extra figures that I keep on my desk.
Nice.
So that's always been like my number one toy that I collect. Obviously, He-Man classics, but that's like a whole other level.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marvel Legends I'm really into now, especially, they've really raised the bar, even more so this year when they introduced the non-peg or pinhole articulation. If you've seen that.
How do they put those together? I've heard you mention those on the YouTube channel.
Here's two examples. Here's the Marvel Legends Kang.
Uh-huh.
And what they've done, I don't know if you can, is basically the elbow is on a swivel inserted in as a pin.
Oh, wow.
As a peg. So there's no pins. There's no pins on the legs either.
Mm-hmm.
That is beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
Stormtrooper, the same thing. And this is really awesome. So they have the ball joint going in as a peg into the upper leg or the upper arm. So you don't see any pins. The Hasbro's doing some amazing stuff. I'm just a fan of that. And they're doing some amazing characters.
That really allows the people who love to do stop motion animation to really play with their figures that way, huh?
And not only does it give it a better range of motion, but they don't look as much like toys on screen. They look more like they step right out of the movie or the comic or the comic page. So
right.
That's amazing.
Really cool stuff.
That's really amazing. So on the subject of your YouTube channel, I've just listed here some of my favorites of the videos that you made, and I've watched a ton of them. DC Universe Classics is a bit outside my wheelhouse right now, so I haven't watched as many of those as I have your Masters of the Universe Classics. You do director's commentaries on those lines since you worked on those lines. And but beyond that, you have a lot of unique insight that you brought to the industry, about the industry in general, to mere mortals like us. You have a video about how you got your job at Mattel, which I thought was fascinating. How action figures are made, in aisle versus end caps, how toys are placed at retail. I just love that. What really happened to Toys R Us in English so that the average human being can understand it, and how it has impacted the toy industry in recent years. The new evidence about Wondar, the Wonder Bread He-Man. I loved reading that. I haven't collected Masters of the Universe since. I'd say I bought a handful of the classics figures just because I had to rein in my spending insanity. But I love the figures that I did buy. But I love reading more about the history of Wonder Bread He-Man, the golden Batman figure that Kenner Hasbro had made back in the day, and its impact on the industry. And scalpers, that they can be a positive in the industry. I think that's fascinating stuff. Some of the stuff is things people might not want to hear, but it's a reality. And as a collector, you have to deal in reality, even with playthings, right?
You definitely hit the ball on the head. Ball on the head? So, but I mean, yeah, a lot of it, like, and I've even prefaced some of my videos with like, all right, don't shoot the messenger. All I'm offering is the truth. You can swap. I'm giving you the red pill. If you don't want it, back off right now. And I mean, really, from being in the industry, there's, I guess, the sort of, I wouldn't call it the sad truth. The reality check is 90 to 98% of the people who work in the toy industry are not toy fans or collectors. They're just business people, smart business people, good people, but they're not toy fans or adult collectors the way we are. There are some. There absolutely are some. And that was one of my big eye openers at Mattel, because as we're all adult collectors, for all of us, toys are sometimes, some of like the most, next to our friends and family health job, it's our number one hobby. It's what we do with our spare time. We're in our room, I can see you guys with all this cool stuff in the background, and looking at this stuff makes us happy constantly. So we just sort of assume that everyone who works on toys feels the same way.
Right. And they don't.
And a lot of times when I was working with new hires or people coming on my team, especially on the collector stuff, I would explain to them and say, okay, the product you're working on, whatever you do on Sunday afternoon, whether it's jet skiing, reading a book, playing an instrument, going to yoga class, whatever you do in your spare time, you have to think of that feeling to this toy and magnify it by 100, because that's how the customers feel about it. And I think even a good way of getting us toy collectors to see the reverse is taking a toy that we have no interest in, like, say, a wooden train, like a Brio wooden train set, right? Legitimately a toy, but not one that you probably actively play with or collect.
Yeah.
So the way you feel about a Brio wooden train, oh, neat, cool, fun, awesome toy, but really not for me. That's how most of the people who work in the toy industry feel about, Stormtroopers and Voltron Lions.
Oh.
So, while to us it's everything. And going into the toy industry as an adult collector myself, I was actively buying 2000X He-Man toys and the Bruce Timm Justice League line when I started at Mattel. Yeah. So here I was physically, the day before I started Mattel, I was hunting at Target for a Hawkgirl figure, and the next day I'm at Mattel watching people make it. So, wow. Beyond that just being mind-blowing in itself, the whole, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory aspect, it also did start to, I realized, like, wow, there's like so much going on, and people, like, I wish toy companies would explain these simple things. Yeah. And what I really enjoyed doing with the YouTube channel is the fact that everything I'm explaining is not proprietary to a company.
Right.
I'm never going to talk about something that's proprietary to Mattel, like production numbers or finances or stuff like that. I respect the companies I work for. But yeah, things like how toys get placed in aisle, or the fact that they're made with these giant metal tools, every company does that.
Right.
And even I'm actually working on our own toy line, so we've been in contact with vendors overseas and been given all the same information, which also made me realize what anybody could call these Hong Kong factories to get this information. It's free information. So let me see if I can disseminate that a little and ease some frustrations people have, like why are there empty pegs, and why do customized programs happen, and there are reasons behind, there's rationale behind the madness. It's usually business related.
Yeah, so that was another video of yours that I neglected to mention. Why are there so many empty pegs at major retailers? I've seen a lot of people react emotionally and say, for example, Hasbro has a horrible problem and has for years stocking shelves. Those are claims that I've heard from the adult collector community about Star Wars, Transformers. So many adult collectors can't find a given Star Wars action figure or Transformer toy or whatever. And, until I watched your videos, I just kind of thought, well, maybe, except if this was a problem, the company wouldn't be in business. Right. So, I mean, it isn't a problem if Hasbro is still surviving as an organization, and if the major retailers are. Your videos shed a lot of light on that, which I found to be very interesting.
Yeah, and obviously people can go to Spector Creative on YouTube to get the full scoop, but the short version on empty pegs is that, especially now that we're in a sort of age of the retail, the toy aisle, not the toy store.
Right.
KB, Toys R Us, FAO are gone. And, the sort of, I guess, lowball way of putting it is that in a big box retailer, whoever it is, Walmart, Target, Big Lots, Best Buy, whoever, they more or less have to treat every aisle the same in terms of how aisles are stocked, returns, you name it. Like the way it works for a tennis racket or a scented candle is the same for an action figure. And again, we're very emotionally connected, to our toys, but to a big box retailer, it's a, $19.99 SKU that takes up this amount of square footage. Yeah. That's really what it is. And the reason you see empty pegs in the toy aisle is because it only takes one of us. A new case pack is put out, and whether it's a scalper or just a collector, a great example is there was a Marvel Legends wave out a few months ago with Deadpool with Strong Guy, who was the Build-A-Figure, the character from the 90s X Factor. And I was excited to get Strong Guy because I collect the mutants from the 90s. It's one of my Marvel Legends passions. So when I got to Target one morning and I saw the Deadpool wave hanging there, I bought every single one because I wanted to get the Build-A-Figure. And the only thing I left was the extra Deadpool because he was 2 per case, but everyone else was 1 per case. So it only took me coming in to clear that entire peg. And so now anyone else who comes in that day sees an empty peg. You don't see this in other aisles like screwdrivers or breakfast cereals. Like when a new case pack of, scented candles, comes in, nobody comes in and buys every single one. Like that doesn't happen. And while you would think like, oh, well, can't the big box stores react to this and change their policy for that aisle? And the reason that they can't is because not every toy, like they can't have a policy by the peg, if you will. They have to have at least at minimum a policy by a whole aisle. And if they replenished every toy in every peg in that aisle, constantly throughout the day, meaning they're keeping all this inventory in the back that's, taking up space. Right. Well, not every toy line sells out. Only really the Marvel Legends did. Nobody came and cleared out, the Minecraft figures that are right next to it, if you will.
Right.
So, that's why they can't, they can't, judge each peg and keep inventory in the back to constantly replenish. And really the end, I know I'm babbling a bit, end sentence is for retail, for toys, they expect every peg to sell 1 unit per week. So if you get a case of, Black Series Star Wars or Marvel Legends or, Hasbro G.I. Joe, it's a case pack of 8. Well, that's supposed to be 2 months worth of product, if you will. And I mean, if it's going to fit on one peg, sometimes they have to, split over 2 pegs. But let's just say a peg can hold 8 figures. So that's 8 weeks of product. So if somebody like me comes in and buys an entire Deadpool wave, so there's 8 figures out and I buy 7 of them, and now there's 1 figure, well, it's going to sit there for now 7 more weeks before the replenishment comes.
Wow.
And that's why, because if they kept up inventory to replenish quicker, the inventory would stack up in the back. Because what if a line doesn't take off? How are they supposed to bet on every wave and know, oh, this wave of Marvel Legends is going to fly off the shelf, but the Captain Marvel wave with Carol Danvers, which didn't sell that well, then they would be stuck with all this inventory. Wow. So it's much better to bet, on the side of they'd rather have empty pegs than overstock.
Right.
Basically.
It's not amazing.
It's a much safer bet. Because overstock is terrible. You have to sell it at a discount. It devalues the brand. It devalues the store to have discount items. So it's preferable to have empty pegs, which we're like, what do you mean? You know, that's like cringing to us.
Yeah.
But from a business standpoint, you know, that's why you see empty pegs.
Well, you talked about how the some of the business people aren't just big toy fans. Now, when you talk about whether it's made from a movie or a TV show, and these are toys that are supporting that, the people that are involved in the making of the TV show or the movie, you can understand how they might light up when they see a toy associated with their movie or TV show. And if they're like one of the actors, their character, you know, here's a toy in that character, it really lights them up and makes them feel good when they can have those things around them that support the experience they had in making that TV show or movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the creatives, if you will, in, you know, call it Hollywood or, you know, whatever. Yeah, absolutely. They're usually always very supportive of toys, you know, both from an ego and happiness standpoint, but they can also, if you will, and I don't mean this literally, but be ignorant of toys, not understanding what toys sell and what toys don't. They'll be like, oh, you know, I've got this, you know, awesome pirate gun in my movie, you know, or this three-headed monster. But it's like, you know, as an example, kids don't like pirate guns. Kids like laser guns, if you will. Kids, you know, that's just, you know, from like, or, you know, swords sell way better than guns as boys role play. So someone who's got a gun in their movie and they want a role play toy of it and the company doesn't want to make it and they don't understand, but like, why? But I've got like this really cool like laser blaster. They're like, well, yeah, but kids like swords and they like laser swords more than, you know, metal swords. So, you know, that's actually also even goes back to the whole toyetic movie consulting that I do, where I help people at the script stage figure out, okay, yeah, even what kind of weapons should we give the heroes that will translate to toys that will sell? Because if you give them all pirate guns, they're not going to sell as toys. They might look cool on screen, but kids don't like old-fashioned, you know, flintlocks, if you will. They're not. They just don't sell. So that's kind of one example.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, there's you were talking about the Mandalorian earlier, and there's a dark saber that's a main plot point in the Mandalorian right now with Giancarlo Esposito's character and with Katie Sackhoff and her characters going after this thing.
The dark saber. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's great because now here you have a laser sword in a color kids have really never seen before, black.
Right.
And it's the MacGuffin, if you will. You know, it's what everyone's trying to track down. You know, I mean, if you look back like at Raiders of the Lost Ark, with the Ark being the MacGuffin, what a MacGuffin needs to do is switch hands constantly. So right now the bad guys have it. Well, I bet you know another episode the good guys will get it, and then the bad guys are going to get it back, and then neither one's going to have it, and then Baby Yoda's going to have it, and you know that's what a good MacGuffin does is it propels the plot forward. So if you can make the MacGuffin, you know, something that lights up and you could battle with, like, you know, hey, yeah, I mean, the people making The Mandalorian are absolutely on the money. Yeah. I mean, you know, from changing up his outfit. I don't know. Thought I had it.
And we're talking about people like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like this Mandalorian figure here. You know, I mean, he's got the little emblem that he, you know, really only wears in season 2. You know, in the first 3 episodes, he had completely different armor, but it's very little extra tooling. Like, this is a great example of a figure. Like, this is kind of an example of what I do, where I would have advised them to do exactly what they're doing, because they have one version of he wears one armor in the first like 3 or 4 episodes, more or less. And to do a new figure of him in the Beskar armor, it didn't require that much new tooling. It was, you know, 80% the existing figure with a few new parts, new chest armor, new jetpack, but legs are the same, arms are more or less the same, head is the same, cape is the same, and it's just a new deco. That's a perfect example of toyetic qualities. And yeah, I mean, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, what they're doing with The Mandalorian, like, super great. I mean, and the way they're not overplaying the Star Wars hand.
Yes.
Like, everything feels natural. You know, I know there's spoiler alert because I'm assuming people have seen are up to date with the current episodes. But like in the premiere of season 2, when the Crate Dragon attacks, when it's first coming towards the village, and it's basically that's like a Western. Is that episode?
Yeah.
And you hear the Crate Dragon scream. And immediately I was like, oh my God, it's a Crate Dragon. Because I remember that Obi-Wan does that.
Yeah.
And that was like a perfect example of their subtleness versus, even the prequels and the sequel trilogy didn't always feel Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah, I saw a video, I want to say it was Screen Crush on YouTube, where they were talking about how the bars and restaurants in The Mandalorian feels like a bar and a restaurant in Star Wars. It's future, but it's, cobbled together future.
Right.
Versus even in the prequels, like the sports bar that Obi-Wan and Anakin go into, or then later Dexter's Diner. Like, that's not Star Wars, like that didn't feel like it. And yeah, I'm really excited about what they're doing with The Mandalorian. Yeah.
Dexter's Diner reminded me of Back to the Future when Marty walks in and asks for a Pepsi Free. More than Star Wars. Yeah. And on the subject of that, my family was fortunate enough to visit Walt Disney World a month before all the 2020 stuff happened with COVID and all that. And although we didn't have reservations at the restaurant in their Star Wars themed area, we were allowed to peek and look around. And it felt so Star Wars. The entire land did. I mean, Disney, say what you will about some of the productions, some of the feature films, whatever, some of the entertainment. They know how to market. They've got expert designers. They know how to recreate that feel. And kudos to them at the park, and with a lot of what I've seen in Mandalorian. I agree with you. It feels so right,
Yeah. I mean, I love just spotting things in the background, and like the way they had R5 still on Tatooine. And he had the scar on his head from when he blew his gasket in A New Hope. And it's just like they're not heavy-handed. I think the way some of the new entertainment has been.
Yeah, I just keep thinking of like in Solo, a Star Wars story, which I did like on the whole. There's a scene where Han and Chewbacca are standing side by side. What's your name? Chewbacca. That's just too long. I'm going to call you Chewie. I mean, it's one of those examples of something that's kind of ham-fisted unnecessarily, or seeing. Although I love Rogue One, Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba just running by. It's like, what?
Yeah, that was like they were trying. I think that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
And then the fact that they kept putting out Ponda Baba action figures around the time of Rogue One, as if I know.
So we would be really missing out if we didn't talk about the Matty Collector stuff. So we really do want to get into that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're wrapping up Voltron.
Oh, yeah. Let's Voltron. Yes.
Yes. We do talk about Voltron here once in a while.
Yeah.
But you had already shown us the Green Lion figure. So can you bring that back up again?
Oh, yeah. Well, yes. I yanked him his arm off. I've got my full Voltron in the corner there. So, yeah. Yes. So here's Green Lion. We got Pigeon side there, of course.
Right. And now, one of the things that we had talked about back. Oh, there we go, Greg.
Nice.
Greg's got the full thing.
Yes.
That was 23 inches high, right?
If I try to pull mine out, I think like 5 other things are going to fall over.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we had talked about on the pitch figure was all the figures. You go by a style guide. Specifically with the old panache plate style stuff. And part of the style guide includes the dots on the figures, and you called it Dotgate.
I'd forgotten about that. Yes.
Yeah. So can you explain to me why dots are on the figures?
You're talking about on the shoulders here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the shoulder pads. Here's Sven.
Yep.
And there are the dots.
Yeah,
yes.
There's Pidge with the dots.
Yes. Can you explain that?
Pidge.
Wow, God, that's
time to see.
I have not thought about that in a long time.
Yes.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean that came from the style guide that we were using. Yeah. I mean, was it Universal DreamWorks that owned it at that time? Voltron's
was classic weapon, classic media. Yeah.
It's one of those properties, even like Motu, that keeps changing hands. It's like the Village Bicycle. Everybody gets a ride. It's like that with Voltron toys too. It's like, what toy company now has not made a Voltron toy? It's like insane. Like we thought ours was going to be like the definitive final one, and then like a year later, someone comes out with a bigger one. Yeah. I mean, the dots that was part of the style guide, what the licensor, how they wanted the set. I suppose we probably could have done a second run without the dots, maybe later on. Once the version that. It's sort of like it's same thing like with that yellow Batman video. It's like as long as you first do the one the licensor wants you to do, like the correct one, the show accurate one, then you kind of have permission to deviate off of that, but only once you've done the correct one first. You can't go out with yellow Batman. You can't go out with dotless Pidge, I guess, if you will. I know it's actually very similar to, we did a General Zod figure, a 12-inch one. He's actually on my shelf back there. And the detail work on his clothing, his vest, has a red border going around it, like the sleeves and down the chest. And a lot of fans were very upset when they saw it that we use this bright red material. But that's the thing, is the actual prop, that's what it looked like. But in the movie, because of lighting, it looked a little darker. It didn't look as bright red. And so when we put that out, much like with the dots, people are like, whoa, that's not what it looks like. I'm like, no, actually, no, it is. Like, if you want it to look darker, just shine a light on it like the camera did.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the original Enterprise from Star Trek. Fans for years debated, is it white? Is it gray? Is it kind of bluish? Is it kind of greenish? Well, it depends on the lighting in the show. It doesn't really matter what the model looks like necessarily.
Off on, same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Is it blue? Is it brown? Like, you know what? Make both. Then you can have the one you want.
So I know we have Voltron to talk about, and let's do that. I do want to bring up that Mattel, its involvement with Voltron actually didn't begin with Matty Collector. It began in the 1980s when Mattel acted as a distributor for Panache Place toys outside the United States. So I have here in front of me a 1986 Mattel UK retailer catalog.
Nice.
And in the back, among all the amazing stuff like Space Barbie, Barbie and the Rockers, the Hart family, and all this amazing stuff, Popples, Rainbow Bright, Princess of Power, just beautiful photography, Hot Wheels, Masters of the Universe. In the back here is Voltron. And so this was Mattel's distribution of the, there went my 34-year-old catalog.
Just don't make catalogs like they used to.
Yeah, they don't. But in any case, all the promotional photography for the Panache Place toys. And so I hope I don't roll my chair over the pages that just fell out. And then here, of course, is a Panache Place coffin with the Mattel logo because they distributed it way back in the day. But, let's get into where you fit in here, Scott. Matty Collector and Voltron. So how did Mattel and Matty Collector, its subgroup, get involved with the Voltron license in the 20-teens?
So essentially, there was a new animated series coming out, which was
Voltron Force.
Voltron Force, yeah.
Yep.
Which, it didn't perform that well, which is why it kind of went away quickly. I actually thought it was awesome.
Oh, me too.
But that's not important right now.
Right.
And so essentially, Mattel was looking to, expand their portfolio, and they were actually looking at both Voltron Force and the new Thundercats line, the new Thundercats animated series that was coming out at the time.
Yes.
Right. And the choice was made to go with Voltron because, Mattel management felt that looking at from a portfolio standpoint, Thundercats was close to He-Man, more or less. I mean, it was, barbarian-esque sword, kind of play, versus Voltron was it was giant robot play, which was different. I mean, from a 100 feet away, lens, if you will.
Sure.
I'm not saying Thundercats was He-Man, obviously. So the choice was basically, they were looking at both, and the choice was to go with Voltron because it would expand the Mattel portfolio to a giant robot toy, which we weren't making any toys of. So the interest with Mattel was making toys for the new cartoon show. And they developed a huge line for the new cartoon show. I mean, figures, lions, role play, interactive as the whole wazoo.
Mm-hmm.
What with Matty Collector, basically, because we had, this partnership to do the Voltron Force toys, management wanted to, whet the appetite, especially of the adult collector, for this new cartoon by doing vintage figures based on, the vintage Voltron.
Right.
And, we were more than happy to do that. But I will say 90% of things sold on Matty Collector, I directly was involved in, especially from a design standpoint and a marketing standpoint. With the Voltron, the big one, I actually was not, it's not that I wasn't, but the team that was working on the retail line that never went to retail because the show didn't do well, it lived on their P&L, it was under their direction. We were just selling it for them. Versus Motu Classics and Ghostbusters and all the other stuff we did lived on my P&L, and we developed it, the Matty Collector team. That Voltron toy, we were just basically, it was much like the Panache stuff being sold by Mattel. It was developed by the retail team, but it was going to be, much like you do an exclusive for Toys R Us or an exclusive for Walmart, it was an exclusive for Matty Collector.
That's interesting.
Yeah, which was good and bad. It was a little frustrating for me because when I did suggest things to them, they basically didn't listen because they were like, well, we're the retail team. We know what we're doing. Specifically, one of my grievances with it was that they wanted to have the legs where's the button? Have this automatic pop-out feature.
The button is on the butt.
The button's on the butt.
The big square plate.
There we go.
Yes.
I always forget. It's been a long time since I've actually played with one of the. I just keep it on my next to my wall.
Sure.
So I really wanted the legs to work like Battle Cats, where they were fully articulated, and especially with ball joints where connected with the torso or the butt, I guess, if you will. But they were very insistent that they have the pop-out feature, and that's because they were coming from a retail kid standpoint where kids like pop-out features. And I was like, yes, but if you're making it an exclusive for Matty, we have to do an adult collector version. Yeah. And I remember just fighting for that one, and they just would not listen. And I was like, fine, do it your way, but I'm telling you right now, that is not the way. And
this is not the way.
Yes.
So I will tell you that I remember a lot of toy reviews criticizing the toys for that very reason, the auto transformation features. I thought they were neat, but yes, I mean, as a play feature, but yeah, as an adult collector, it did bother me that you couldn't really pose the lions. I mean, they're huge. They have an amazing presence on a display shelf, but yeah, they even though they've got posability, it's not very, very effective because of that spring-loaded feature.
And and you can tell. I mean, that was basically the retail team was used to making kid toys. Yeah. So they're like, oh, well, we have to give it. It has to have a feature. I'm like, no, it doesn't. No. It needs to have a spring-loaded feature or lights and sounds because that's how toys sell. You're not selling to kids. I mean, that's basically what it was like. I mean, they still it's like. It still came out great, but I knew it could have been better, and to me that was always frustrating.
I am one of I've defended the toy quite a bit, the 23-incher. I actually like it a lot more than some.
Well, let's not forget they also did the Blazing Sword Voltron.
I will tell you, this is one of those deals where when I first saw it, I thought, well, it looks cool, but it doesn't transform. But when I did get it, and I did get it anyway, I loved this thing, and I still do. I think this is one of the best Voltron representations ever if you're into the anime look, which I absolutely am.
And it had over 30 points of articulation.
Yeah. So I think they really did hit it out of the park on that one. What were your thoughts on the Blazing Sword Voltron?
Oh, same thing as you. That's one of my favorite Voltron figures because even though, if I'm posing him with other 6-inch figures, it's obviously out of scale, but you kind of have to just let that go and just accept it as a really cool Voltron action figure that you can hold in your hand and put on your desk, and have the blazing sword. I mean, that one, absolutely. That one came out perfect. I love what they did. I mean, you wouldn't even want to have like tiny little mini figures inside because you'd lose them and stuff. The whole point was to have articulation and still look cool.
Right.
And it's an exception to the rule, but it works.
Right.
It's a rare exception when you have a non-transforming Voltron, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, so I will say in another defense of the giant Voltron, I'm going to do my darndest not to drop it because I would be devastated. I'm going to take these off, and I just want to show the auto transformation feature that I absolutely love, and I think you guys might remember this.
Okay.
So the best of these transformation features, arguably the one that is absolutely awesome, is this one. And I'll form the head. Awesome, huh?
And actually, honestly, my favorite feature of the big Voltron was the fact that the pilot feature, the fact that you could put the figures inside.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people love that.
I mean, that to me, like that was actually the one direction when we were starting the project that I did give. It's like, you have to make it so the pilots can go inside. I said, we have to treat them basically like they're all mini X-Wings, and it has to work that way. And the team was fine with that. And the scale worked. It wasn't like things, like the old, the toy from the 80s where it was a little wonky with the figures going inside. Another thing I really wanted to do was give it more of the features from the die-cast toy from the 80s. Like the way, I think, forgive me if I'm screwing this up, but it was the yellow line, right? Where like the cheeks.
Oh, the little flaps.
Yeah. And God, I can't. And one of them, like a little piece rose on.
Okay, here. This is my childhood Matchbox die-cast.
There you go. Yes, that's the one I had too. That was my
Now the Japanese toy, the original Japanese Popey Bondi toy, had more features than this. But yes, you could flip open the little side panels, the ears on the head, and the Japanese version could shoot rockets out of here.
Wow.
But yeah, and then the little pop-up cannon on the back that you could articulate. Yeah, and the Blue Lion had the pop-up head plate and all that.
So I was really pushing for that. I
really?
thought that would have been. I said, look, if you want to have pop-out features instead of the legs, do that stuff because there's a nostalgia connection there.
Yeah.
And I just didn't. Again, I didn't win that battle, but I just have so many memories. Yeah, popping open on the Yellow Lion. I don't know what it was about that feature, but it was just one of my favorite toys as a kid was popping open the Yellow Lions.
And no one has done it since, other than the Trendmasters remake of the Metal Voltron, which was substantially identical to the Matchbox version. It had the opening plates. No other version has had it since the original.
Yeah, I just thought that would have been that if they were looking for a kid feature to put into it.
Yeah,
that would have been the one to do. But again, it's like you've got to. A big thing was just learning to like pick your battles, and you weren't going to win everything, and sometimes you just had to back off, and
I love the action figures, and that one thing I should point out is that you could buy those things when they were released on MattyCollector.com, but if you were not a subscriber and didn't do the upfront kind of, or get your buy in to the subscription, those things sold out often inside of 30 minutes.
Yeah,
I remember buying not only the set through my subscription, but also waiting in the lunchroom at my employer at that time and just waiting for 12 noon to hit Eastern so that I could try to buy a second set. And that was very difficult. But if you subscribed, there was a Sven, an exclusive Sven who could fit in the Blue Lion. And this is a redeco, I believe, of Lance, I think.
We were able to use Keith, Lance, and Sven used the same body. And then Punk had a bigger one, Princess, obviously, and Pidge.
Yeah, and the fun thing about each of the figures, which I love that you guys made the action figures, because I'm a Star Wars fan from way back. I don't have all the vehicles that I had as a kid, but I do have all the old action figures from Kenner. And so each figure had two heads. There's the helmetless head, and then the head with the helmet, which was really cool. And then the display stand was shaped like the key of the lion. And so, and it could act, and it, like Panache Place, except that thing was this weird little clip that never worked. But here you have this display stand with a little peg here. And, it helps to remind the casual fan who flies which lion, because certainly when you're wearing black, it's not intuitive that you would fly the blue lion.
And the stand, the key, I don't even know if you can use it to open up the actual lion.
Yeah, that was a clever feature. So, and it also triggered some of them. It was shown in the promotional video as triggering the auto transformation features, which not really. I mean, and I remember in the video they're playing whoever made the video, the 80s Voltron theme was playing, and every part of the video looked great, except the part where the green key and red key were touching the butts of the red and green lions to trigger the legs. But great times. I really enjoyed that whole experience with Matty Collector. What can you tell us about Voltron Force? I mean, I know that you were on the Matty Collector side, but one of the big mysteries among Voltron collectors is what was going on with Voltron Force? How far did they get with their plans? Were any prototypes?
Well, we saw the prototypes at VoltCon, remember?
Well, okay. So San Diego Comic-Con 2011.
Yeah.
There was a huge display of the awesome Matty Collector stuff. The Blazing Sword Voltron, the giant lions that we just talked about. And then we saw what looked like maybe painted 3D prints or something like that of Voltron Force. The robot was maybe 18 inches tall in a display case. We saw lions in a couple different poses, stock standing pose and an action pose. And then I remember there was a prototype or a mock-up of the gauntlet that the characters wore in the show called the Voltcom. Do you remember anything about that stuff? How far any of that got, Scott?
So all toy companies, especially Mattel and Hasbro, work about 3 years in advance from basically first idea, like putting words on paper that we're going to make these toys, to it being on the shelf.
Okay.
So the Voltron Force line made it very, very far along. Basically, I mean, all the way to almost production.
Oh, wow.
Where basically, but no major, I think Toys R Us was the only retailer interested, but then when the show just didn't hit, everybody canceled their orders. But it definitely, I mean, it had full packaging was developed with Trimes. There were figures, there were lions, there was role play. I know, and even like year 2 was worked on, because if you will, that year 1 product, which was ready to ship it at the same time, because you're working 3 years in advance, you're now working on the second season's product. And I know they definitely had things where you could switch up who was the central lion.
Right.
Oh, wow.
I know that was a big thing. Like the whole theme of year 2 was switching up the central lion. I don't remember exactly how they did it, if it was just repainting it, or I think there were figures like the 6-inch Voltron where they just basically painted it in the different colors. But I mean, the lions all, the same thing. They had, the articulation and the pop out legs. And you could combine, I think it was sold both as individuals, but you could also get like a box set that had all of them combined, but the same toy packaged 2 different ways. I mean, it was, a good 2 to 3 foot planogram of product. I mean, it was designed to be a pretty big statement.
Wow. And so they got through the tooling and everything, because
I don't know if they did that. They probably stopped what's called toolette, is when you basically authorize the vendor to cut the tools. What they probably did is they probably designed the tools, but never pulled that last trigger, which is when you have to cut the big check.
Right.
And that's always when you toolette, you're in, basically. And it's like, there were some like Motu minis that were tooled but never shipped, like She-Ra and the Horde Trooper. And that does happen occasionally, where a figure, will get tooled but never made. Basically, once it's tooled, it's like you might as well make it, because you've just spent $50,000 on this giant metal tool. But I would say the Voltron Force line and the Legion of Superheroes animated series are the 2 lines that I saw that went the farthest but didn't get to retail.
Wow.
They've made it, packaging prototypes, full color, with figures inside. I mean, show it, Mattel would show it at internal presentations, and usually they would show it like as a planogram, so you could see what it was going to look like.
Mm-hmm. I would love to see that.
You'd walk into the Mattel showroom, and you'd see a 3-foot section of Voltron Force, all laid out like it was going to look at Toys R Us or Target or Walmart. I know, break the heart.
Yes.
Did you ever get notified by the people at the Toys That Made Us that came out on Netflix? Do you remember that show?
Oh, I know. I watched that show. Absolutely. No, they definitely didn't contact me because they gave credit for everything I did to Super 7.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, if you watch the He-Man episode, they briefly cover classics at the end, and they basically said, and then Super 7 came along and did a collector line, and they did everything from castles to dragons to vehicles, and they did like over 200 figures. I'm like, no, they didn't. Like, you just took 10 years of my life and assigned it to someone else.
Yeah, you did the first, 95% of Masters of the Universe classics?
Including, pioneering what HasLab does now with the castle.
Right.
Everyone's like, now HasLab is breaking new ground and doing these giant. I'm like, no, we did that 10 years ago, but thanks for playing.
I'm sorry you didn't get credit for that.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't contact me, because I could have given them a lot of cool stories. And not only the fact, it wasn't as much that they didn't contact me, but the fact that they actually completely miscredited the line, as if Super 7 came along and did this whole thing. So
I'm sorry.
It doesn't matter, but it does make me laugh.
Yeah. We are so thrilled to have had you here joining us on the podcast.
Big time.
Just hearing your experiences and your insight into the toy industry, both for mass retail and the adult collector, and covering your time with Voltron and the experience at Matty Collector, it's just been a treat. So thank you so much, Scott, for joining us.
Thank you guys. I'm most grateful for being asked to be on the show, and I'm happy to come back. It's great to talk toys. It's like I forgot about the dots. I haven't thought about that in 10 years.
I'm glad we could bring that dot gate back to you.
Another thing is, I remember the Matty Collector forums at some point. It might have been you or someone else from Matty Collector, but it probably was you. I think you pretty much were in many ways the face of Matty Collector. Not Matty, of course, but on the forums there was some kind of a feeler that was sent out for, if we came out with another wave of figures, who would you like to see? And I do remember that being out there at some point. Whoever had dropped.
Oh no, that was me, because I remember I really wanted to do the bad guys.
Oh yes, yes.
And even if we couldn't do more Lions or the Vehicle Force or something, I thought that we could at least keep the 3 3/4 figure line going.
Yeah.
For 2 or 3 years. But basically, once the animated show missed, I think Mattel just dropped the license.
Wow.
So we didn't have rights to do them anymore. I thought that would be a good 2, 3, 4 year line for Matty, doing a figure every other month and doing a subscription.
That would be great.
Yeah. But I also wasn't as knowledgeable about the obscure characters from the show off the top of my head. So I wanted to make sure we were doing the characters fans wanted.
Right.
Yeah. I remember seeing that thread and thinking, yes, there's going to be more. Oh, well.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us on Let's Voltron, the official Voltron podcast. Thank you, Scott.
My pleasure. Thank you again. Grateful for you having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely be following you even more on your YouTube channel, Spector Creatives.
Yep, check it out. It's got lots of fun stuff and lots of rambling.
And out formed the head.
That's my best.
Instant head formation action.
And we'll see you all next time on
Let's Voltron!